Mr. Toastmaster, Toastmaster dignitaries, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. What values do you live by? Are you willing to stand up for what you believe in regardless of the consequences? Years ago, I was put to one of the most serious tests of my life in having to choose what it was I would stand for. And that was brought about by a teenage boy who stood up courageously for what he believed in. It was 1972. I was 2 years out of law school, and I was working as an assistant United States attorney in Los Angeles. That job was my apprenticeship to becoming a skillful and competent trial lawyer. It was also during the time of the Vietnam War. And on this particular day, in June of 1972, it was my assignment to prosecute an 18-year-old boy named Daniel, who had refused to be inducted into the Army after he had received a call to duty. I observed Daniel in the courtroom as he sat nervously waiting for his trial. He was a boy of mild stature. He was wearing a clean white shirt, dark slacks. There was a childlike innocence about his face that was amplified by curly blonde hair and rosy cheeks. He looked so young. And he was all alone. There was no parent or friend in the courtroom to support him during this very frightening experience for him. The judge called the case for trial. He heard the evidence against Daniel and then turned to the boy and said, "Son, do you have anything you want to say before I find you guilty?" Daniel said, "Yes, Your Honor, I do." And he stood up and he faced the judge and he said, "Your Honor, I can't go into the Army because I don't believe in killing people. I cannot take another life. I believe that life was given to us as a gift by God and that it's sacred. I believe we were put here on this planet to love one another, and that if we have differences, we must decide them by nonviolent means. That's why, Your Honor, I can't go into the Army." I was taken completely by surprise with Daniel's testimony. I could not believe this boy was standing so courageously for what he believed in. It was clear to me, beyond a reasonable doubt, that he was speaking his own truth, honestly and with deep conviction. And his sincerity spoke to my heart. I asked myself, what do we do in prosecuting this boy? And then I began to feel really strange about my role in this trial. I began to be uncomfortable about it. When Daniel finished testifying, the judge looked at him and he said, "Son, do you realize that because of what you believe in, I've got to find you guilty and sentence you to prison for 5 years?" Daniel looked at the judge and he said, "Yes, Your Honor, I understand." And the trial was over. I left the courtroom and hurried back to my office as fast as I could get there. I went in, shut the door, sat down at my desk just as the tears started to flow from my eyes. I wept for 15 minutes. Although I didn't agree with Daniel at that time, I knew what had happened in that courtroom was wrong. It had fallen on me the obligation to enforce the system of justice that had dishonored this boy's sincerely held beliefs. And I felt deep disappointment in what I had done. And I knew I could never do it again. Shortly, I walked across the office to the hallway to my boss's office, asked if I could see him. He said, "Sure." I went in. I told him what happened in the trial. He said, "So what?" I said, "So what? This boy should have never been indicted. The system completely screwed up by not giving him an exemption from military service. It tore me up to see him convicted that way. I can't try another case like this. He leaned back in his chair with this look of arrogance and said to me, when you took this job, you took an oath to uphold the laws of the United States. That's your obligation. What are you telling me now? Fear pulsed through my body. Had I violated my oath of office? Could I still recant what I said? I knew the next few words out of my mouth could have a serious effect on my entire legal career, and I hesitated. And then I remembered the courage of Daniel in the courtroom, and it inspired me to stand in the truth of my own heart. And I said to him, I know what oath I took, and I know what my obligations are, and I'm going to ask you one more time, don't ever, ever assign me a case like that again. He leaned back in his chair, put his arms up like this, and just looked at the ceiling, and then said, get out, get out. And I left his office. In the months and years after that, he never mentioned that confrontation again. And he never, ever assigned me another case like that. The memory of that experience has been with me throughout my life. That conflict between what my heart told me and my professional obligations set me on a lifelong practice, 2 lifelong practices. Number 1, to be continuously aware of the tension that can so often arise between the demands of the external material world and the wisdom of my own heart. And number 2, for me to remember always, always, that being true to what I believe in is more important than the fear of the consequences. The values that we think we believe in, we say we believe in, are meaningless unless we're willing to put them into action in our lives. At some point in life, the wisdom of each and every one of our hearts is going to come in conflict with the demands of the world out there. And when that conflict presents itself, each of us, are going to be asked to answer the question, what do you stand for? And when that question presents itself in your life, what will your answer be? Mr. Toastmaster.